The signal came at 3 in the morning, station time. Sat alone in the communications room, watching the endless stream of data flow across his screens. The deep space monitoring station was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew slept. Only the soft hum of machines kept him company. He had worked this job for 12 years. Before that, he served 20 years in the human navy. He had seen war. He had seen peace. He had seen things that still visited him in dreams. Now he watched the stars and listened to the whispers of the universe. The signal was different from anything he had heard before. It was not a standard distress beacon. Those were clean, precise, designed to travel across great distances. This signal was raw. It was desperate. It carried the weight of fear that no technology could hide. Sat up straight in his chair. His fingers moved across the controls, cleaning the signal, making it clearer. The language he recognized it from his training years ago. They were a peaceful species. They were small, fragile beings with skin that glowed softly in different colors depending on their emotions. They had no military to speak of. They had no weapons worth mentioning. What they had was kindness. What they had was a history with humanity that most people had forgotten. Remembered. 30 years ago, during the colony wars, human refugee ships fled through space with nowhere to go. No species wanted to help. No species wanted to risk the anger of the winning side. But they opened their borders. They gave humans food, shelter, and medicine. They asked for nothing in return. Now their voices filled his speakers, and they were screaming. Press the emergency button on his console. Commander Mira arrived within minutes. She was a woman of 45 years, with sharp eyes and hair cut short for practical reasons. She had earned her position through decades of service and decisions that others called impossible. She walked into the communications room still pulling on her uniform jacket. "What do we have?" she asked. "Emergency broadcast said, there is under attack." Mira moved to stand behind him, reading the data on his screens. "Who would attack they have nothing worth taking." "They have themselves," said quietly. "The signal mentions the Dominion." Mira's expression hardened. The Dominion was known throughout the galaxy. They were conquerors. They were slavers. They moved from system to system, taking whatever they wanted. Weaker species became property. Stronger species became obstacles to destroy. "How bad?" Mira asked. "Their fleet is destroyed. Orbital defenses are gone. Ground invasion is in progress." Paused. "Commander, they are taking prisoners, families, children." The door opened again. Ambassador entered the room. She was standing only 4 feet tall, with large eyes that reflected light like pools of water. Her skin normally glowed a gentle blue, the color of calm. Now it flickered between gray and dark purple, fear and despair. "I heard the alert," said, her voice shook. "Is it true? Is it my world?" Mira looked at, he nodded. Made a sound that humans could not properly hear. It was a cry of grief, pitched too high for human ears. But they could see it in the way her small body trembled. They could see it in the way her skin went dark. "My family," whispered. "My mother, my sisters, they are there." Mira knelt down to meet's eyes. "We received the signal. We know what is happening." "Then you will help?" asked. "Humans are strong. Humans are warriors. You can save them." Mira stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of innocent beings were being dragged from their homes. Somewhere out there, children were crying for parents they would never see again. "Protocol says this is not our war," Mira said. "Protocol says we should report to Earth Command and wait for orders." "Protocol," repeated. The word sounded hollow. "Commander said, the sheltered our people when no one else would. My grandmother was on one of those refugee ships. She survived because of them." Mira was silent for a long moment. The galaxy had a name for humans. They called them. Earth was a planet of high gravity, extreme weather, and predators at every turn. Humans evolved to survive conditions that would kill most species. They were stronger than they looked. They healed faster than they should. They could run for hours without stopping. They could ignore pain that would make other beings collapse. The galaxy feared humans. The galaxy did not trust humans. The galaxy watched humans and waited to see what kind of species they would become. Mira turned from the window. Open a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. Yes, Commander. What will you say? Asked. Mira looked down at the small ambassador. In her eyes, there was something hard, something old, something that humans carried in their blood from a time when they hunted in packs and protected their own against all threats. I will say that our friends are dying, Mira said. I will say that they once saved us when they had nothing to gain. I will say that the galaxy is watching to see what kind of species we are. She walked to the communications console and stood beside. And I will say that humans pay their debts. Skin began to change. The dark colors faded. A small light appeared in her chest, spreading outward. It was not hope exactly. It was something more fragile. It was the first breath after drowning. They are powerful, said. They have conquered dozens of worlds. Mira's expression did not change. They have never met us. Finished opening the channel. The screen flickered to life, showing the symbol of Earth Command. Channel open, Commander. Mira stepped forward. She straightened her uniform. She lifted her chin. This is Commander Mira of Deep Space Station 7. I am declaring a humanitarian emergency and requesting immediate military response. The is under attack by the Dominion. Millions of civilians are at risk. They are our allies. They helped us when no one else would. She paused. Now they are crying for help, and I believe humanity should answer. The message traveled across the stars at the speed of light. It would reach Earth Command within hours. From there, it would climb the chain of authority, passing through offices and committees and arguments about risk and reward. But Mira had served long enough to know something about humans. They argued and debated and calculated costs. But when innocent people suffered, when children screamed, when allies begged for mercy, something woke up inside them. Something old, something fierce, something that remembered the darkness of caves and the howl of wolves and the simple truth that survival meant standing together. The would answer. Sent a message of her own that night. She recorded it in her native language, her skin glowing with fragile hope. Hold on, she said, the humans are coming. General Ho had not slept in 36 hours. He stood in the war room of Earth Command, surrounded by screens showing maps, troop positions, and the faces of politicians arguing across secure channels. He was 62 years old. His hair had gone white years ago. His body carried scars from battles that history books now taught to children. He had won wars that others said could not be won. He had saved lives that others said could not be saved. And now he listened to people in comfortable offices explain why humanity should do nothing. The Dominion has never attacked human territory, said a voice from one of the screens. It belonged to a man in an expensive suit, a member of the Diplomatic Council. If we intervene, we risk starting a war we cannot win. We risk nothing by waiting, said another voice. They are not a strategic asset. They have no resources we need. This is not our fight. Ho let them talk. He had learned long ago that some people needed to hear themselves speak before they could hear anyone else. When the voices finally stopped, he stepped forward. 30 years ago, he said, they opened their borders to human refugees. They shared their food when they had little. They gave medicine to our sick. They buried our dead with honor. He paused. Does anyone in this room know how many human lives they saved? Silence. 47,000, Ho said. 47,000 men, women, and children who would have died in space. They saved them without asking for payment, without asking for treaties, without asking for anything at all. The man in the expensive suit shifted uncomfortably. "General, we appreciate the history, but we must think about the present. They outnumber any force we could send." "Numbers do not win wars," Ho said. "Determination wins wars. The will to fight wins wars, and I have never known humans to lack either." He turned to face all the screens at once. "The galaxy calls us, they fear us, they distrust us. They watch every move we make, waiting to see who we truly are." His voice grew harder. "If we abandon our allies, we prove that humans cannot be trusted. We prove that we are exactly what they fear. But if we answer this call, if we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, we prove something different." "And what is that?" asked a woman from the military council. "That humans protect their friends." The debate continued for another hour. In the end, the vote was close, but it passed. Earth Command authorized a strike force, surgical, limited, enough to hurt the rescue civilians and send a message to the galaxy. General Ho had 18 hours to save a world. The assault carrier was the finest ship in the human fleet. It carried 2,000 soldiers, 50 fighter craft, and enough firepower to turn a moon to dust. Its captain was a woman named Shin Won. She was 40 years old with a face that rarely smiled and eyes that saw everything. Her crew called her the Iron Lady, though never to her face. She had commanded for 7 years. In that time, she had never lost a battle. She gathered her senior officers in the briefing room as the ship prepared to jump. "I will not lie to you," she said. "This mission is dangerous. The fleet outnumbers us 3-1. Their ground forces have already taken the major cities. We are going into a fight that logic says we cannot win." She looked around the room. No one spoke. But logic has never been humanity's greatest strength. Our strength is something else. It is the refusal to give up. It is the choice to stand when others would run. It is the belief that some things are worth dying for. She activated the display behind her. It showed images of civilians being forced into transport ships, children crying, families torn apart, bodies lying in streets. "These are our allies," one said. "They saved our grandparents, they asked nothing in return. Now they are dying and they called for help." Her voice was steady, cold, certain. "We are going to answer." The officers saluted. The briefing ended. The crew prepared for war. Lieutenant Park walked through the corridors with a weight in his chest that he could not name. He was 28 years old. He had trained for years. He had scored highest in his class for weapons systems. He had dreamed of proving himself in battle. Now battle was coming, and he was afraid. He found himself standing near an observation window, watching the stars stretch into lines as the ship prepared to jump. An older officer joined him. Her name was Lieutenant Commander. She had served on for 15 years. "First real combat?" she asked. Nodded. He did not trust his voice. "I was terrified my first time," said. Hands shaking, stomach turning, kept thinking I would freeze when it mattered. "What did you do?" Smiled slightly. "I froze completely, could not move for almost 10 seconds. Stared at her. "But you are still here, you are still serving." "Because my commander grabbed my shoulder and said 4 words, turned to face him. She said, 'Feel it, then act.' I do not understand." "Fear is not your enemy, Lieutenant. Fear is a signal. It tells you that something matters. It tells you that you care about surviving. The mistake is trying to make the fear go away." She put a hand on his shoulder. "Do not fight it, feel it. Let it move through you, and then do your job anyway." Was silent for a long moment. The stars continued to stretch. "What if I'm not strong enough?" he asked. "You are human," said. "Humans are never strong enough. We are too soft. We get sick. We get tired. We break under pressure." She smiled. "And then we keep going anyway. That is what makes us who we are." The ship shuddered as the jump drive activated. Reality bent around them. The stars became streaks of light, and then they were gone, hurtling through space toward a world they had never seen to save people they had never met. In her quarters, Captain One reviewed the battle plans one final time. The odds were bad. The enemy was strong. The mission was nearly impossible. She thought about her crew, 2,000 men and women who had volunteered for this, 2,000 lives that she held in her hands. Some of them would not come home. She knew this. She accepted this. It was the weight that every commander carried. But she also thought about the millions of innocent beings who had done nothing wrong, families who wanted nothing more than to live in peace, children who had never hurt anyone. They had called for help, and humanity had answered. In the final hour before arrival, Ambassador broadcast a message to her. The station had boosted the signal so it would reach through the jamming. Her skin glowed with colors that humans could not fully see. Her voice carried frequencies that human ears could not hear, but her words needed no translation. "Hold on," she said. "Do not lose hope, they are coming." On Prime, huddled in underground shelters, hiding in basements and caves and ruins, millions of beings heard her voice. They did not know what to expect. They had heard stories about humans, stories about their strength, stories about their violence, stories about their strange world where everything wanted to kill them. They were afraid of but they were also afraid of what the humans might be. They did not understand yet. They did not know that humans had another name for themselves. Not warriors, not conquerors. They called themselves protectors. And they were 18 hours away. The commander stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his empire grow. Below him, the burned. His soldiers moved through the cities like a flood, collecting the weak, destroying the defiant, claiming everything of value. This was the way of the Dominion. This was the natural order. The strong took, the weak served. There was no morality in the universe. There was only power. Was tall for his species, with thick gray skin and 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. His eyes were black and empty, like holes in his face. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had enslaved billions. He felt nothing. "Report," he said. "Ground operations are ahead of schedule," his second officer replied. "We have captured 3 million. Slave transports are filling quickly." "And resistance?" "Minimal. They hide, they run, they beg." The officer made a sound that might have been laughter. "They are not warriors." Nodded. This was expected. They were prey animals. They had no claws, they had no teeth. They had evolved on a world with no predators, no challenges, no hardship. They were soft. They were weak. They were perfect slaves. "Continue operations," said. "I want this world emptied within 3 cycles." Then the alarms began. "Commander," a sensor officer called out. "Unknown ships entering the system. 14 vessels. Configuration does not match any known species." Turned on screen. The display changed to show the approaching fleet. The ships were unlike anything they had encountered. They were angular, aggressive, built for war rather than beauty. They moved in tight formation, fast and coordinated. "Identify them," ordered. "Working," the officer paused. "Commander, the configuration matches human vessels." Humans had heard of them, a species from a harsh world on the far side of the galaxy. They were said to be dangerous, but they had never interfered with Dominion business. Why would humans come here? "Unknown, Commander." Considered the display. 14 ships against his fleet of 42. The numbers were laughable. Whatever the humans wanted, they would learn quickly that they had made a mistake. "Ignore them," he said. "Continue ground operations. If they approach, destroy them." Captain Shin One watched the fleet on her tactical display. 42 ships. Most were larger than their weapons were powerful. Their shields were strong. "Direct assault is suicide," said her tactical officer. "I agree," one said, "which is why we will not attack directly." She pointed to a cluster of asteroids on the edge of the system. "We use the debris field for cover, electronic warfare to confuse their sensors, hit and fade. Make them chase us while our ground teams do their work. And if they do not chase us, they will. One's eyes were cold. They are conquerors. They cannot allow a challenge to go unanswered. Their pride will not permit it. She turned to her communications officer. Signal the ground teams. Operation begins in 10 minutes. On the surface of Prime, Sergeant Bai waited in a drop pod with 9 other soldiers. The pod shook as it entered the atmosphere, heat building against the outer hull. Through the small window, she could see the glow of a burning city. Bai was 34 years old. She had served in hostile environment combat for 8 years. She had fought on ice worlds, desert worlds, jungle worlds. She had faced enemies twice her size and walked away victorious. But she had never fought for stakes like this. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. Bai checked her rifle one more time. Around her, her squad did the same. They were silent, focused, ready. The pod hit the ground hard. The doors blew open, and humanity stepped onto Prime. The gravity was lower than Earth. Bai felt light, fast, powerful. She moved through the streets like a ghost, her squad spreading out behind her. The air smelled like smoke and fear. They found the first group of survivors within minutes. A dozen huddled in a collapsed building, their skin flickering with terror. They screamed when they saw the humans. "Easy," Bai said, raising one hand. "We are here to help." They did not understand her words, but they understood her tone. One of them, an elderly being with faded skin, stepped forward slowly. "Humans?" the elder asked in broken Common. "Yes, we received your distress call." "You came." The elder's skin began to glow, not with fear but with something else, wonder, disbelief. "You actually came." "We take care of our friends," Bai said. "Now stay close. We are getting you out of here." They moved through the city, collecting survivors as they went. They were small, fragile, exhausted. Many were wounded. Some were too weak to walk. The human soldiers carried them. Then they encountered A patrol of 12 soldiers rounded a corner and stopped in shock. They had expected to find more cowering prey. Instead, they found humans. Bai did not hesitate. She moved before they could react. Her body, evolved on a world with gravity nearly twice what they experienced, was a weapon in itself. She was stronger. She was faster. She hit harder than any being that had ever faced. The first fell before it could raise its weapon. The second managed to fire, but Bai was already moving, already out of the line of fire. Her squad opened up behind her. The firefight lasted 11 seconds. When it was over, 12 lay on the ground. The humans had no casualties. One of the young survivors stared at Bai with wide eyes. "You killed them," the young one whispered. "So fast, so easily." Bai ejected the empty magazine from her rifle and loaded a new one. "We are," she said. "This is what we do." Commander received the reports with growing disbelief. Human ground forces had landed in multiple locations. They were cutting through his patrols like they were nothing. They were rescuing prisoners. They were setting up defensive positions. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are outnumbered. Why are they winning?" His officers had no answer. Watched the tactical display as another patrol went silent. Then another. The humans were not fighting like any species he had encountered. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not surrender when surrounded. They kept fighting until they won or until they died. "What are these creatures?" he muttered. One of his officers pulled up a data file. "Humans evolved on a Class 12 death world, Commander. High gravity, extreme weather, apex predators on every continent. They are persistence hunters. They chase their prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They are primitives. They are survivors." The officer hesitated. "Commander, our ground forces are taking heavy casualties. The humans are protecting the refugee sites. Our soldiers cannot break through." Stared at the display. For the first time in many years he felt something unfamiliar. It was not fear exactly. It was the beginning of doubt. "Pull back the ground forces," he said. "We will deal with the humans from orbit." "Commander, I will not lose soldiers to these animals. We will glass the refugee sites from space. The humans cannot protect them from a bombardment." Elder had lived for 90 years. She had seen her world grow and change. She had seen peace and prosperity. Now she saw fire. She sat in an underground shelter with hundreds of her people. Above them, the humans had formed a line. They stood between thee and the, refusing to move. A young child sat beside her. "Why do they protect us?" the child asked. "They do not know us." Thought about the question. She remembered stories from long ago, stories about human refugees who had come to Prime with nothing, stories about her grandmother helping those strange, frightening beings when no one else would. "Because we helped them once," said, "and humans do not forget." The child looked up at the human soldiers. One of them, a woman with tired eyes and a kind face, looked back and smiled. "They are not like the stories," the child said. "The stories say they are monsters." "The stories are wrong," said. "They are not monsters, they are protectors." Above them, the sky began to glow. Warships were moving into bombardment position. The humans did not run. They raised their weapons. They checked their armor. They looked at each other with eyes that said everything. And they held the line. The space above Prime became a storm of fire and light. Pilot Oh Sung-min led his fighter squadron through the chaos, weaving between weapons, fire, and debris. His hands moved across the controls with the certainty of a musician playing an instrument. Around him, his squadron followed in perfect formation. "Alpha Squadron, target the flagship's shield generators." Captain One's voice came through the communications system. "We need those shields down." "Understood," Sung-min replied. "Alpha Squadron moving to attack position." It was a suicide run. Everyone knew it. The flagship was surrounded by defensive ships. Its weapons could tear a fighter apart in seconds. The approach vector required flying directly into concentrated fire. Sung-min did not hesitate. "All wings follow my lead. Maximum thrust. Do not slow down for anything." The fighters accelerated. The sensors tracked them, calculating their path, predicting their movements. Guns swiveled to intercept. But the guns were designed to target ships that flew like ships, ships that moved in predictable patterns, ships that valued the lives of their pilots. Human fighters did not fly like that. Sung-min pulled his ship into a turn that would have killed a pilot instantly. The force of the maneuver pushed him back into his seat. His vision went gray at the edges. His body screamed in protest. He ignored it. "Pull up," his computer warned. Structural limits exceeded. He pulled harder. The gunners lost tracking. Their systems could not follow targets that moved in ways that logic. By the time they recalculated, the human fighters were past the defensive line. "Alpha Squadron, weapons free," Sung-min ordered. 12 missiles streaked toward the flagship's shield generators. 8 were intercepted by point defense. 4 hit their targets. The shields flickered and died. "Direct hit," Sung-min reported. "Flagship shields are down. Repeat, shields are down." Aboard, the Captain One allowed herself a small nod. "All ships, focus fire on the flagship. Take it out of the fight." The human fleet moved as one. They had been designed to work together, each ship supporting the others, each crew trusting the rest. It was not just technology. It was something deeper, something that they did not understand. Humans had evolved in tribes. They had survived by cooperating. They fought not as individuals but as a single organism with many parts. When one ship was damaged, another moved to cover it. When one weapon failed, another compensated. They were strong, they were numerous, they were experienced. But they fought as commanders and slaves. Officers gave orders, soldiers obeyed. There was no trust, there was no cooperation, there was only fear of failure. And fear made them slow. The main batteries opened fire. Energy beams cut through space, striking the flagship's exposed hull. Explosions blossomed across its surface. Atmosphere vented into the void. "Commander," a officer screamed on the flagship's bridge, "we are taking critical damage. Engines are failing." Stared at his displays in disbelief. His flagship, the pride of his fleet, was being torn apart by a force one-third his size. It was impossible. It was humiliating. "All ships concentrate on the human carrier," he ordered. Destroy it now." 41 ships turned their weapons on the barrage was overwhelming. Shields flared and failed. Hull plates buckled. Fires broke out across the ship. On the bridge, Captain 1 gripped her command chair as the deck shook beneath her. Damage reports flooded in. Casualties mounted. Systems failed one after another. "Shields are gone," her tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We cannot take much more of this." One's expression did not change. "Hold position. We are buying time for the ground teams." "Captain, if we stay here, we die." "Then we die." Her voice was steady. "But we do not abandon our people." Lieutenant Park stood at his weapons console, hands shaking. The ship was coming apart around him. People he knew were dying. Everything he had feared was happening. "Feel it," he told himself. "Feel it and then act." His hands steadied. His mind cleared. He looked at his targeting display and saw something that had missed. "Captain," he said, "the flagship's main reactor is exposed. If I can hit it precisely, the resulting explosion will disable or destroy at least 3 other ships." One turned to look at him. "Can you make that shot?" "Yes," there was no hesitation in his voice. "I can make that shot." "Then make it." His fingers moved across the controls. The remaining weapons aligned on the target. He had one chance, one moment. Everything he had trained for came down to this. He fired. The beam struck true. The flagship's reactor went critical. The explosion was massive, a burst of light that the sun. The flagship ceased to exist. 2 nearby ships were caught in the blast. A third was thrown off course, colliding with a fourth. In seconds, the formation fell into chaos. "Direct hit," said. His voice was quiet, calm. "Flagship destroyed." On the surface of Prime, Dr. Han worked in a collapsed hospital, surrounded by the wounded and the dying. She was 32 years old. She had trained for 8 years to become a doctor. She had served in field hospitals across human space. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. The wounded were everywhere. Their fragile bodies broke so easily. Their skin, usually glowing with soft colors, was dim and gray. They needed help that she could barely provide. But she tried anyway. "You need to evacuate," a soldier told her. "They are bombarding the city. This building could collapse at any moment." "I am not leaving my patients," said. "Doctor." I said no. She did not look up from her work. "These people need me. I stay." The soldier hesitated, then nodded. "Then we stay too." Worked through the night. She taught healers human triage methods. She shared her supplies. She held hands with those who were dying and told them they were not alone. An elderly healer watched her with wonder. "Why do you do this?" the healer asked. "We are not your people." Finally paused. She looked at the healer with tired eyes. "You are people, that is enough." Outside, Sergeant Bai received word that they were evacuating prisoners to slave ships. Thousands were being loaded into transports. Once those ships left orbit, the prisoners would be gone forever. "We cannot let them leave," Bai said. "We have to stop those transports." Her squad was exhausted. They had been fighting for hours. They had taken casualties. They were running low on ammunition. "Sergeant," one of her soldiers said, "there are too many. We do not have the numbers." "We have enough." Bai loaded her last magazine. "We are human. We have always been enough." They moved through the burning city like ghosts. They found the convoy of prisoners being marched toward the transports. hundreds of, bound and terrified, surrounded by guards. The humans attacked. It was not a fair fight. It was never meant to be. They had numbers, they had armor, they had every advantage. But the humans had something else. They had the fury of protectors watching innocents suffer. They had the rage of beings who had evolved fighting for survival. They had the terrible, unstoppable determination of a species that never knew when to quit. The guards fell. The prisoners were freed. They stared at their rescuers with disbelief. "Run," Bai told them. "Get to the shelters, we will cover you." They ran. The humans held position, facing the reinforcements that were already approaching. "Sergeant," her soldier said, "we cannot hold here." "We hold until the civilians are safe," Bai said. "Not a second less." They charged, the humans fired, the night exploded into violence. And through it all they escaped. Mothers carried children. The old helped the young. They ran towards safety while behind them, humans stood between them and death. In orbit, Commander watched his fleet crumble. His flagship was gone. His formation was scattered. The humans refused to die. "Order all ships to retreat," he said. The words tasted like poison. "We are leaving." His officers stared at him. They had never retreated. It was unthinkable. "Commander," one began. "I said retreat." His voice was hollow. "We cannot win this. These creatures do not fight like any enemy we have faced. They do not value survival. They do not calculate odds. They simply refuse to stop." The fleet began to withdraw. Ships that had come to conquer now fled toward the edge of the system. On the Captain One watched them go. "Do we pursue?" her tactical officer asked. "No." One leaned back in her chair. Her ship was bleeding from 100 wounds. Her crew had given everything they had. "Let them run. Let them tell others what happened here." She looked at the planet below. The fires were still burning, but they were still alive. "Let them tell the galaxy," she said. "What happens when you attack our friends?" 1 month after the battle, Prime was still healing. The cities were broken. The fields were burned. The scars of war marked every corner of the world, but the people were alive. The children still laughed. The future still existed. And humans were everywhere. They had not left after the battle. When the fighting ended, they stayed. They brought food and medicine. They brought engineers and builders. They set up hospitals and shelters. They worked beside workers, lifting heavy loads, clearing debris, rebuilding what had been destroyed. General Ho walked through a refugee camp, watching human soldiers hand out supplies to families. A child ran past him, chasing a ball that a Marine had given her. The child's skin glowed bright yellow. Happiness. "General," a voice said behind him. He turned to find Representative standing there. Was from a neutral species, an observer sent by the Galactic Council to document what had happened. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and large eyes that never seemed to blink. "Representative," Ho said, "what can I do for you?" Was silent for a moment. He watched a human medic treating a wounded elder. He watched human engineers showing workers how to repair a power generator. He watched two species working together like they had known each other for centuries. "I do not understand," said finally. "Understand what?" "This," gestured at the camp. "Your species won a great victory. You drove away a superior force. You proved your military strength to the entire galaxy." He paused. "And now you are building houses." Ho smiled slightly. "Is that confusing?" "It is unprecedented." Turned to face him. "Every species I have observed uses victory for gain. They take territory. They demand tribute. They establish dominance. But humans won this battle and asked for nothing. We did not come here for gain." "Then why did you come?" Ho watched the refugee camp for a long moment. He saw a human soldier sitting with a group of children, teaching them a game with sticks and stones. The children's skin glowed with colors he could not name. "Because they asked for help," Ho said. because they were suffering and we could stop it, because 30 years ago they saved our people when no one else would. He looked at, because that is who we choose to be. Blinked, it was the first time Ho had seen him do so. The galaxy calls you, said. They fear you. I know. They should not. His voice was quiet. They should not fear beings who travel across the stars to protect strangers. They should not fear beings who win wars and then heal the wounded. They should not fear beings who carry children they have never met to safety. He paused. They should be grateful that such beings exist. In the capital city, ambassadors stood before a gathering of thousands, and humans stood together, united by what they had survived. The sky above was clear for the first time in weeks. The smoke had finally faded. Elder stood beside her. The old woman's skin glowed with soft purple light, gratitude mixed with sorrow. 30 years ago, said, her voice carried by speakers across the crowd, my grandmother welcomed strange beings to our world. They were refugees. They were afraid. They had nowhere else to go. She paused. My grandmother told me that she was frightened of them at first. They were so large, so strong. They came from a world of violence and death. She did not know if they could be trusted. The crowd was silent. But she helped them anyway. She gave them food when they were hungry. She gave them shelter when they were cold. She treated them with kindness even though she did not know what they might become. Turned to look at the human soldiers standing in the crowd, men and women who had fought and bled and died to save her people. Now I know what they became, she said. They became protectors, they became friends, they became the answer to our prayers. Her voice broke slightly. We called them, we thought that meant they were dangerous. We were wrong, she bowed her head. It means they survived. It means they endured. It means they know what it is to fight for life. And when we were dying, they came to fight for us. Stepped forward. Her skin was bright with colors that humans could not see but could somehow feel. I sent a message when the battle began, said. I told my people that they were coming. I did not know what that meant. I only knew that humans had answered our call. She looked out at the crowd. She found Captain One standing among the human officers. Their eyes met. This is Captain Shin One, said. Her ship was dying, her crew was dying, she could have retreated. She could have saved herself. Instead, she held position while her people rescued ours. Walked down from the platform. She crossed the distance between them and stopped in front of One. You brought my family home, said. My mother, my sisters, they are alive because of you. One's expression softened, just slightly, just for a moment. We protect our friends, she said. Reached up and took One's hand. Her skin glowed bright blue against the human's pale flesh. Then we are friends, said, now and forever. The crowd began to glow, thousands of their skin lighting up with joy and hope and love. It was a sight that no human had ever seen before. It was a gift that words could not express. Lieutenant stood in the crowd, watching the ceremony. He thought about the fear he had felt before the battle. He thought about the moment when he made the shot that changed everything. A young approached him. It was a child barely reaching his waist. The child's skin was bright green, curiosity. You are human, the child asked. Yes. Are you a warrior? Considered the question. A month ago he would have said no. He was just a weapons officer, just a man doing his job. But he had stood in the fire, he had faced his fear, he had done his duty. I suppose I am, he said. The child reached out and touched his hand. Thank you for saving us. Felt something warm spread through his chest. Pride, purpose, the knowledge that his life had meaning. You are welcome, he said. Representative recorded everything. He captured the ceremony, the speeches, the tears. He documented human soldiers playing with children. He filmed the reconstruction efforts. He noted every detail. When he finally sent his report to the Galactic Council, it was simple. It was brief. It was perhaps the most important document he had ever written. "The answer to cry for help," he wrote. "They fought against superior numbers. They suffered terrible losses. They won a victory that should have been impossible. And then they stayed to rebuild what was broken. The galaxy has long feared humans. We have wondered what they would do with their strength. We have watched and waited to see what kind of species they would become. Now we know. They are protectors, they are builders, they are friends. The galaxy should not fear them. The galaxy should hope that humans consider it worthy of protection." On the surface of Prime, as the sun set and the stars began to appear, human and sat together. They shared food. They shared stories. They shared laughter. The war was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, the message spread, from ship to ship, from world to world, a simple truth that changed everything. They had answered a cry for help. And they had delivered not just retribution, but something far more powerful. They had delivered hope.